Breathe in slowly and feel the warmth of ancient air around you, soft, dry, and still. A faint fragrance drifts on the breeze, faintly spiced like myrrh rising from a copper burner left in some forgotten chamber. You are somewhere far from now, somewhere that never rushes, somewhere older than maps, older than memory. The sands stretch endlessly before you, golden and silver in the dusk, as if the desert itself is made of time that has fallen gently to earth. This is not the Egypt you have seen in paintings or postcards. This is not the Egypt of pharaohs atop battle chariots, nor the Egypt of crowds and relics and names spoken too loudly. This Egypt is a softer one. It is the hush behind temple doors, the silence inside the tomb. It is the breath between heartbeats in a world that believed the soul was more than one thing. It is the Egypt of Duat, the shadowed path beneath the living world, where the soul would journey after death, not as punishment, not as judgment, but as transformation. Here, the sky does not roar, it listens. The river does not rush, it remembers. The stars are not fixed in space, but drift softly across a velvet canopy, each one humming with the name of a god, or a spell, or a soul long returned to stillness. Tonight, you walk along that path, though not in fear. You are not here to be tested or lost. You are here to remember, to float gently into the stories that came long before you and will whisper long after. The ancients called their land Kemet, the Black Land, named not for darkness, but for the rich silt along the Nile, the soil that birthed everything and returned all to rest. They saw the soul not as a single thing, but as many. The Ka, the Ba, the Ah, aspects of self, separated at death, reunited through ritual, guided by spell and rite and remembrance. And death itself, it was not the end. It was a horizon, a crossing of one sacred river into another life beneath, a world not of fire and torment, but of trials and balance, one where a heart was weighed not against a scale of sin, but against a feather, the feather of Ma'at, truth, justice, harmony. If the heart was too heavy, the soul would dissolve. But if it was light, if it remembered balance, it would pass through fields of peace toward the light of the afterlife. You do not need to hurry. The journey begins slowly, like the slow unfolding of a lotus at dawn. Let go of the day, of the clock, of names and plans. There are no directions here, only soft waters to float upon and echoes to follow. Tonight, we return to the very beginning, to the waters before waters, to the gods before death had a name, to a silence so deep even creation had not yet dared to speak. From that stillness a world rose, a breath, a tear, a story, and from that story an entire way of dying and living again. Let the sands remember for you now. Let the night guide your thoughts as gently as a priest's hand lifting incense toward the stars. Let the tale unfold. Segment 1. How the Legend Was Born. Part 1. In the Waters Before the World. In the beginning, there was no Nile, No pyramids, no sky, no soil, not even darkness, because even darkness needs something to cling to. There was only none, a boundless ocean of still, silent potential. None was not chaos in the sense of noise or confusion. None was the absence of all that could be known, depth without shape, breath without body, silence without edges. Imagine drifting in it, not as yourself, not as a thought or even a soul, but simply as awareness. You feel no up, no down, no warmth, no cold. There is no light, yet no fear, only the soft, infinite hum of becoming. The ancient Egyptians believed this was how everything began, not with fire, not with violence, but with waiting, with stillness, with the pause before the first note in a divine symphony. None was not evil, not dangerous. It was what existed before differentiation. All things lay within it, unformed, undivided, asleep. And then the water stirred, gently, not like a storm or a wave, but like a breath drawn inward for the first time. From that breath rose a single mound. It emerged from none like a memory surfacing from a forgotten dream. This was the Benben, the first land, the first shape, sacred, solitary and complete. It stood alone in the waters, golden in light that had not yet been named, and upon it alone stood the first god, Atum. Atum was not born, not shaped by hands, not whispered into being by another force. He simply came to be, complete within himself, neither male nor female, but all things waiting to take form. Standing upon the Benben, he saw only stillness, and in that stillness he began to create. Not through command, not through force, but through essence. From his breath came Shu, the god of air and space. From his moisture, his tears, came Tefnut, goddess of water and balance. Shu and Tefnut spiraled out into the ocean of Nun, creating space between them, a sacred pause where other things could begin to grow. But they wandered far, too far, and Atum, for the first time, felt longing. From his longing, he summoned his eye, a radiant, living part of himself that searched through the waters to find his children and bring them home. When Shu and Tefnut returned, Atum wept once more, this time in joy. From his tears, humanity was born. And from the union of Shu and Tefnut came Geb, god of the earth, and Nut, goddess of the sky. But Geb and Nut were so bound in love, so intertwined in embrace, that nothing else could form beneath or above them. So Atum commanded Shu to lift Nut into the heavens, where she arched above, her body glittering with the stars of future nights, while Geb lay below, rooted and fertile. Between them hung the space where creation could unfold. Time could now begin to flow. The sun could rise and set. The river could curve and breathe. Seasons could cycle. Everything that was fixed began to move, and everything that moved fell into balance. Balance, ma'at, was the principle beneath all others. It was not merely law, but harmony, rhythm, truth. The universe would be upheld by it, and every god and mortal would be bound to its breath. In this earliest world, Osiris had not yet ruled. Isis had not yet whispered her spells, and Anubis had not yet guided any soul. But the bones of the afterlife had begun to form. The rhythm of rising and falling, of light and shadow, had been established. Life would someday end, but it would not disappear. It would travel, rejoin, and renew. Death was not a wall. It was a doorway into the same rhythm that gave birth to stars and souls alike. The story of the Duat had not yet been told, but it waited beneath everything, like the Nile beneath the fields, like dreams beneath sleep. And you, floating gently in the hush of this first world, begin to feel how everything begins again, softly, always. Part 2. The Coming of Gods, Spirits, and Sacred Order. When Nut was lifted into the heavens and her body stretched across the arch of the sky, she did not vanish into distance. She became the very dome above all life, a mother watching quietly over each day and night. Her belly shimmered with stars, and her fingertips touched the horizon just as her toes curled beneath the opposite end of the world. Every evening she swallowed the sun, and every morning she gave birth to it again. This, the ancients believed, was why the world moved, why darkness never lasted forever, why each cycle, no matter how painful, brought rebirth. Beneath her lay Geb, the earth, father of plants and stones, of animals and fields, lying in perpetual stillness, yet breathing through every root and grain of sand. From their divided love came not only the world's surface, but its destiny. And from their union came 4 powerful children, beings who would shape the core of every Egyptian myth, and whose actions would ripple through the land of the living and into the halls of the Duat. These children were Osiris, Isis, Seth, and Nephthys. Osiris, born first, glowed with the calm dignity of green life. He was a figure of still majesty, wise, silent, and filled with the knowledge of things that grow. The people would one day see him as the god of agriculture and fertility, but more than that, he would become a symbol of life's continuity. He was not fire or war or light. He was presence. He was root and grain, river and return. Isis, his beloved sister and later wife, was born beside him. She emerged from the heavens with wisdom in her voice and hidden names on her tongue. The ancients called her Great of Magic, and she would one day be known not just for power, but for devotion so deep that it reshaped fate itself. She was the moonlight that coaxed the Nile to rise, the hand that knew which spell would open the right gate, the whisper that made the dead remember themselves. Then came Seth, whose presence was not gentle but sharp. Born into the dry winds and red sands of the West, Seth was the embodiment of necessary disruption. His was the energy of drought, desert storms, and fierce independence. He would become the adversary of Osiris, the force that scattered peace so that renewal could follow. Yet he was not evil in the beginning, only wild, untamed, a mirror of the chaos that still clung to the world's edges. Last was Nephthys, the quiet watcher, born from the shadows cast by her siblings. She moved between realms, never fully part of life, yet never claimed by death. She would come to stand beside Isis in the great funerary rites, her voice soft but certain, her presence gentle but sacred. She was the unseen touch at twilight, the flicker of memory before dreams. Together, these 4 would birth the myths of Egypt, not only through their actions, but through their meanings. For every one of them carried a role: life, magic, chaos, mourning. and through them the universe deepened, began to feel, began to echo, and yet above them still stood Ra. Ra was the sun itself, not merely a symbol, but a being whose eye saw all things. He rose each morning in a golden bark, sailing across the sky from east to west, and each evening he sank into the Duat to travel the underworld by night, fighting unseen forces that sought to end the rhythm. Every dawn, his return was a victory over stagnation. He was not only light but protection, an eye wide open even in the dark. Ra was revered as the father of gods, the illuminator of truth and the center of Ma'at. For without his movement, the cycle would still. Without his warmth, crops would not rise. Without his eye, the Duat would overtake the world of the living. And yet even Ra aged. As the world matured, Ra grew weary. Mankind, once grateful, began to forget. Their prayers grew thin, their reverence faded. Ra, once revered from sunrise to sunset, became only a light to be expected. And so, in sorrow and disappointment, he withdrew from the earth, ascending to the sky as Nut's companion. But before he left behind his eye a powerful, watchful force known as the Eye of Ra, who would protect and punish in his stead. This eye was fierce, radiant, and feminine. Sometimes she was a lioness, sometimes a blazing sun disk, sometimes an invisible spirit moving between thresholds. She was both wrath and restoration. From this early age of gods emerged a world where divine order was not rigid law, but rhythm. Everything pulsed in cycles. The Niles rise and fall, the stars journey across Nut's body, the birth, death, and rebirth of crops. Even the gods themselves followed these patterns, sometimes ascendant, sometimes quiet, always returning. And it was within this divine rhythm that the seeds of the Duat were quietly planted. For if the sun must travel a hidden world beneath the earth, if gods must vanish only to rise again, then surely the souls of mortals too must walk such a path. And somewhere deep in the layered mysteries of time, a whisper began to echo, that death was not an ending, but a return. That Osiris, the silent green one, would walk a path no god had walked before, that his body would fall, and from it the first gate of the underworld would open, that his wife, Isis, would remember his name so deeply, so faithfully, that even death itself would pause. But that tale belongs to a later hour in the night, for now we rest in the sacred presence of gods newly born, who look upon the world not yet finished, a world that listens, that breathes, that holds space for the next part of the journey. Part 3. The Shaping of the World, Time and Sacred Magic. As the gods settled into their roles, the world beneath them began to take shape. Not quickly, not with force, but with rhythm. In ancient Kemet, the sacred was not carved into existence with a shout, but coaxed softly into being. The world did not spring from chaos as a war, but emerged like water rising gently after a rain. In the quiet, patient work of gods, land was shaped, rivers set their course, winds whispered across valleys, and time itself began to flow. Time, in this world, was not a line. It was a circle, a rhythm, a breathing of moments. There was no sense of an end, only endless return. The Egyptians did not fear death because death was part of the rhythm, like the setting sun, which was never gone, only hidden. Like the Nile, which flooded, receded, and fed life anew. They believed in a world where everything sacred was a reflection of something eternal, and everything eternal had its mirror in the visible world. So the Nile came to be, not merely a river, but a living thread that stitched together all corners of the world. The gods watched over it, and the people called it Iteru, the great river. It flowed from a place no one could reach, through a land shaped by devotion, and into the sea beyond knowing. They believed it reflected the very spine of the gods, a divine current where souls and sunlight and memory all drifted together. The land along its banks became fertile and sacred, warmed by Ra's rising bark and cooled at night beneath Nut's embrace. It was here, in the ordered spaces between flood and dry, that civilization bloomed, but not as something separate from the divine. The first farmers and builders, priests and scribes, believed they were part of a divine choreography, a ritual lived daily, guided by stars and dreams and the slow, certain movement of the gods above. The world was measured not in hours, but in sacred alignments. Time was marked by the rising of stars, the flooding of the Nile, the appearance of certain constellations shaped like sacred animals, the lion, the ibis, the falcon. The sky was red like scripture. The sun's daily path was a hymn. And when Sirius appeared just before dawn, the people would rejoice. It was the new year, a sign that the flood was coming and life would begin again. From the balance of the gods came Ma'at, not just a concept, but a force. A goddess, winged and serene, whose feather would one day weigh the worth of a soul. Ma'at was the principle behind all things right and beautiful: justice, truth, harmony. The gods upheld her, but so did the people. Every offering, every temple ceremony, every law and oath was a devotion to Ma'at. When the world obeyed her rhythm, crops grew, stars moved in their order, and even the dead could find peace. And yet, the ancients knew the world was not always gentle. Storms came, droughts lingered, jealousy stirred in the hearts of gods and men alike. The desert was always near, but even these things had a place. The red lands, Deshret, the dry wilderness beyond the Nile's fertile shores, were the dwelling place of Seth, god of chaos and storms. Though feared, he was not banished. He was acknowledged, honored in places where wind cut through rock. For even disruption was sacred when balanced by return. Magic, too, found its home in the early world, not as superstition, but as a language of the soul. Known as Heka, it was the force through which creation had first been spoken. Every act of magic, every word spoken in ritual, was a reflection of Atum's first utterance, the original shaping of the formless into form. The priests and priestesses who learned these words were not merely performers. They were caretakers of the cosmos, repeating the divine breath that had first summoned the gods. Hieroglyphs, those sacred images carved into stone, were more than language. They were living spells. Each symbol carried spirit, and to write them was to anchor divine essence into the world. Temples were built as mirrors of the heavens, their axes aligned with star paths, their walls inscribed with incantations to hold the world in place. Thus, the sacred and the ordinary were never truly separate. To plant grain was to reenact Osiris's body being scattered and reborn. To pour water was to echo the tears of Isis. To light incense was to repeat the rising of Ra. Every task was myth made visible, and each moment, waking, sleeping, mourning, rejoicing, was part of a world built not by distance from the divine, but by living beside it. As the gods settled into the cosmos and the people into the rhythm of daily life, one final element emerged, the veil between the worlds. It was not sharp or high. It was like a breeze, like the shimmer of heat above stone. It was said that the Duat, the realm beneath, existed beside our world, overlapping it like a reflection on water. The dead walked there, not in punishment, but in transition. They followed the river just as the living did, only deeper, slower, guided by memory and ritual and spell. And it was here, in this understanding, that the full structure of the world came into place. Above, the sky goddess, below, the earth god, between them, the river of life, and beyond that, quietly present, the Duat, waiting for each soul to arrive. Waiting for the rites to be spoken, waiting for hearts to be weighed, and for the balance to be remembered. It was a world of order, yet not rigid, a world of cycles, yet never dull. It moved like breath, it flowed like water, and through it all the gods walked, some visibly, others only as names whispered into the dusk. And so the foundation was complete. The world had been spoken, breathed, shaped, and aligned. It was now ready for what would come next, the stories of those who would pass through it, shape it, and challenge even death itself. Segment 2, The Legend Behind the Power. Part 1, Osiris, the Green Lord of the living and the dead. Once the world had found its balance and the rhythm of breath had circled through time like the slow pulse of the river, a presence began to deepen among the gods, gentle, watchful, and wise. This was Osiris, not the brightest nor the loudest of the divine, but the one who listened most. He was the stillness between Ra's dawn and dusk, the quiet bloom of grain after flood. He did not arrive with thunder, nor carve his place in stone. Instead, he simply grew, like green shoots rising after long sleep. Osiris was the first to rule over the earth in a form that echoed humanity. Where other gods moved through elements and sky, Osiris walked upon the soil. He lived among the people, not as a distant force, but as a gentle king. He taught them not how to conquer, but how to tend, how to plant seeds, read the seasons, make offerings to the sky and water alike. He taught them to build, not just walls and harvest bins, but laws, customs, songs. He taught them that to care for something was to live in harmony with the divine. In depictions carved by careful hands along temple walls, he is painted green, the color of vegetation and rebirth. His skin symbolizes the living earth, constantly renewing. He wears the Atef crown, white with 2 curling ostrich feathers, high and symmetrical, reflecting justice and clarity. In his crossed arms, he holds the crook and flail not as weapons, but as symbols of shepherd and farmer. He is not a god of dominion, but of restoration, not a destroyer, but a guardian of cycles. By his side, always, was Isis, his sister, his queen, and his balance. She was the voice that remembered, the spell that mended, the light that remained even when all else fell to darkness. Together, they formed a pair unlike any other, not divided by power or distance, but bonded by purpose, by devotion, by eternal resonance. Where he ruled with patience, she wove the invisible thread of protection and magic around him and his people. Their world, however, was not untouched by shadow. For from the edge of the fertile land, from the red sands of the chaotic west, came another presence, Seth, brother to Osiris, yet of opposite essence. Where Osiris gave order, Seth brought disruption. Where Osiris grew things, Seth scattered them. He ruled the desert, the storm, the unknown. But he too had a place in the cycle, destruction that allowed for renewal, darkness that sharpened the stars. Yet, as often happens when harmony grows too still, jealousy crept into the order of things. Seth looked upon Osiris's calm rule with bitterness. He watched how the people bowed in gratitude to a god who needed no fire, who brought no fear, and in his heart the wind began to churn. The story of what came next has many tellings, each gentle in its own way, as if even the priests who preserved it knew it should be spoken with reverence, not fury. In one telling, Seth crafted a beautiful chest, inlaid with cedar and gold. He declared it a gift, offered at a grand banquet. Whoever fits inside this chest, he said, shall have it for their own. One by one the guests tried. None matched the dimensions perfectly, until Osiris stepped in. The lid fell, the trap was sealed, and the chest became a coffin. Seth cast it into the Nile, letting the current carry it far from the green banks and temple songs. Thus began Osiris's descent, not into death as punishment, but into the mystery of transformation. But let us not rush. Let us stay here in this first moment of stillness, where the story begins to shift. A god of life has entered the river of endings. The green one has been closed within silence, and the world above holds its breath, for what follows is not the tale of a hero's rise, but of a god's death that becomes the foundation of every death to follow. A moment that changes not just myth, but the entire vision of what it means to live, to die, and to return. But before we follow that current, let us linger once more on the one they called the Just King, who ruled not by strength, but by rhythm, who listened more than he spoke, who gave order not with fire, but with seed. He was the first to die, and the first to show that death could lead somewhere, that silence could sing. Part 2. The Journey Through Death's Quiet Waters. When Osiris vanished beneath the waters, the world did not erupt into violence or despair. Instead, it grew quieter, like a garden in deep winter. The sun still rose, the Nile still flowed, but something had shifted, like a sacred note no longer heard in the music of the world. The people did not scream or revolt. They simply waited, as if they too understood, even without knowing why, that his absence would not be forever, that something greater than disappearance was unfolding. The chest that held him floated downstream, drifting past temples and reeds, past crocodile-haunted marshes and quiet fishing villages. It moved not like a coffin, but like a bark, not a prison, but a cradle. In its movement was meaning, and though Seth had cast it away with cruelty in his heart, the Nile did not treat it cruelly. It bore the sacred weight gently, allowing it to rest, finally, among the branches of a tamarisk tree where it became hidden, held, and transformed. The tree grew around it. Its wood thickened, encasing the chest entirely. Birds sang above it, wind passed through it, and within, Osiris slept, not lifeless, but beyond life. Time did not forget him. Nature did not forsake him. Even in death, he was still part of the rhythm. But far away, in the golden halls of the gods, Isis felt the ache of absence. She did not rage, she did not panic, she searched. Her love was not loud, it was precise, soft, patient, like a priestess reciting a 1,000-year-old spell with perfect breath. She wandered the edges of the world, cloaked in disguise, speaking to rivers and animals, stones and winds, always listening, always hoping. She knew that death could not be reversed by force, that resurrection was not conquest, it was remembering, and in time she found him, his chest, hidden inside the great tree, now part of the palace of a foreign king. She did not demand. She waited. She became a nurse to the king's child. She showed kindness to those who knew nothing of her pain. And when the moment came, when the truth quietly revealed itself, she claimed what had always been hers, not through battle, but through recognition. She brought the chest back to Egypt, to the sacred lands where their story had begun. And for a moment she wept, not in despair, but in gratitude. The body was found, the path was still possible, but Seth, sensing the shift in the air, moved again. Furious that Isis had undone what he had cast away, he tore the body of Osiris into many pieces, scattered them across the land like seeds in sand, a gesture meant to erase. Yet Isis, once more, did not rage. She gathered. She wandered again, this time not to seek, but to reunite. She traveled the breadth of the land, aided by her sister Nephthys, by falcons and fish, by silence and stars. Every piece she found was held like a sacred relic, washed with tears, wrapped in linen, and whispered over with words older than language. When she had recovered nearly all of him, she began her greatest act of magic, not one of illusion or spectacle, but of stillness. She reassembled his form, not to restore him to the throne of the living, but to awaken him in a new realm entirely, a realm beneath. She used her breath, her voice, her memory, and her magic, and in that sacred night, beneath a sky humming with constellations, Osiris rose, not as a man, but as a god of the dead, not in vengeance, not to reclaim power, but to become the very order of death, to bring balance to the afterlife, to offer the same justice he once gave the living, now to the departed. He did not return to life, he moved beyond it, and from their union in that moment between silence and spell, between death and memory, a child was conceived, Horus, the falcon, heir not only to his father's throne, but to his mother's unwavering devotion. The world above would now change. Horus would rise. Seth would be challenged. A new order would unfold. But Osiris would not be part of it. He had become something greater. He had entered the Duat, not as a wandering soul, but as its ruler, its judge, its still heart. And so, for every soul that would follow, there would be guidance a court, a weighing, a possibility. Osiris, through death, had made death sacred. His body had become the land, his story, the spell, his silence, the promise. And Isis, who never once abandoned her love, became the guardian of thresholds, of mothers, of magic. From sorrow, a path was formed. From memory, eternity was shaped. And the afterlife became not a myth, but a home. Part 3. The throne beneath and the stillness that judges after. Osiris had entered the Duat. The world did not mourn as one might expect. There were no wails across the land, no storms of grief or lament. Instead, there was order, a strange and sacred calm. For his presence below did not mark a loss, but the beginning of something that had never existed before, a just and balanced afterlife. The Duat, once a mysterious shadow realm beneath the earth, became something navigable, something shaped, not easy, not free from challenge, but possible. It was no longer a place of wandering spirits or aimless silence. It became a kingdom, structured, ritualized, governed by law, memory, and truth. At its center, seated upon a black and gold throne, surrounded by silent pillars carved with stars and jackals and wings, sat Osiris, crowned as he had been in life, holding his flail and crook still crossed over his chest. But now his skin shimmered not only with the green of life, but with a subtle light, like the reflection of moonlight over deep water. His eyes were closed, not because he slept, but because he listened to every soul approaching, to every whisper spoken at the edge of death. The Hall of Two Truths was born beneath his reign. There, the soul of the departed, still quivering with the residue of breath, would enter and stand before 42 judges, silent, watchful, eternal. But it was not these judges who gave the final word. Nor was it Osiris who passed arbitrary sentence. It was the heart. Each soul carried their own truth within them, the sum of their deeds, spoken and unspoken, the weight of joy and cruelty, memory and regret. This heart was placed on one side of a great scale, and on the other side, a single feather, the feather of Ma'at, the embodiment of divine truth and balance. Anubis, the jackal-headed guide of souls, stood beside the scales, his fingers steady and impartial. He did not interfere, he did not advise, he simply watched. And nearby, Thoth, the ibis-headed scribe, waited with calm patience, his long quill poised above papyrus, ready to record the outcome. If the heart was light, if it carried no untruth, no imbalance, it would rise in the scale, matching the feather's grace, and the soul would be welcomed, allowed to pass into the field of reeds, a mirror of life's beauty, where all was peace, where the soul could tend the land, reunite with loved ones, walk beneath stars without fear or hunger. But if the heart was heavy, if it bore the weight of deceit, injustice, and broken rhythm, it would sink. And before the soul could plead, the monstrous form of Amit would emerge. Not cruel, only inevitable. She was part lion, part hippopotamus, part crocodile, the sacred beasts of the Nile, her mouth wide, but silent. She did not chase, she did not punish, she simply devoured. and the soul would dissolve, not into torment, but into non-being, forgotten, undone. Yet even this was not cruelty. The Egyptians did not believe in eternal torture, they believed in balance. The worst fate was not fire, but oblivion, to be unremembered, to be erased from the rhythm. And so, funerary rites became essential. The living had a role to play. They could help guide the soul, help remind it of its name, its deeds, its prayers. The Book of Going Forth by Day, what we call the Book of the Dead, was not a grim ledger. It was a map, a gentle script of spells and affirmations given to the dead like a compass for the stars. Osiris reigned through all of this, not with vengeance, not with pride, but with a serenity that made fear dissolve. He had walked the path himself. He had died and returned, not to reclaim life, but to make death meaningful, to turn the unknown into a sacred threshold, to sit forever among reeds and shadow, holding space for each soul to be seen. And across the river of silence, Isis remained, watching, speaking spells into the wind, teaching her son, Horus, who would one day rise and challenge Seth, not only to avenge a father, but to restore what had been broken in the world above. Horus's eyes, one the sun, the other the moon, would one day see all. But Osiris did not return to that realm. His place was now within, beneath, beyond, eternal. The people of Kemet came to know that when they died, they would not fall into darkness, but enter the care of the Green Lord. That if they lived in accordance with Ma'at, if they offered kindness, honored their ancestors, and walked gently upon the land, their hearts would not betray them. They would pass the scales. They would join the eternal field. They would rise again. Osiris was no longer just a myth. He was the still point in the wheel, the silence at the center of the chant, the breath after the last word is spoken, before the next begins. And so he remains, not waiting, not judging, just present. For every time someone dies, it is said a new bark crosses the shadowed river, guided by Anubis, weighed in Osiris's hall, and, if found true, welcomed into the everlasting rhythm that began with a sigh and never ends. Segment 3. Mystery and Lore. Part 1. The Sacred Book and the Names of the Dead. In the hush between death and rebirth, between the weighing of the heart and the crossing into the field of reeds, there existed a guide, not a person, not a god, but a book. Not in the way we think of books now, bound and pressed, but in scrolls of papyrus, inked by steady hands, rolled and tucked among the wrappings of the dead, or painted in long lines upon the walls of tombs. It was not meant to be read by the living. It was meant to be remembered by the soul. The ancient people of Kemet called it Ru Nu Pert Em Hru, the Book of Going Forth by Day. You may know it now as the Book of the Dead, but to those who believed in it, it was never about death. It was a set of instructions, spells, and sacred utterances for navigating the hidden lands of Duat, not as a place of judgment, but as a terrain of symbols, of riddles, of hidden gates and watching spirits. This was a map of the unseen, meant not for the eyes, but for the heart and memory. The Duat was not one path. It shifted, changed, mirrored the soul's own inner shape. For one person, it might be a quiet procession through starlit fields. For another, a dreamlike maze of doors and rivers, watched over by guardians with eyes like moons and voices like water. Each gate, each fork required a knowing, the right name, the right phrase. Sometimes simply the ability to remain still and calm when the unknown opened before you. And so this book, this sacred breath bound in ink, was prepared for the departed. Not every person received the same text. Some scrolls contained as few as 5 spells. Others held 200. The wealthier the individual, the more expansive their copy. But wealth alone did not determine the soul's passage. What mattered was belief, ritual, the memory of one's name. A soul that forgot itself could not pass. It might float, lost between forms. It might face a gate and not remember the correct word, the sacred greeting. But a soul that held its identity, that had been honored with the proper rites, had a map and a voice that matched the stars. One of the most powerful parts of the book was not a spell at all, but a declaration, a gentle proclamation known as the negative confession. It was not a plea for mercy, it was a calm listing of truths. I have not stolen, I have not lied, I have not slain. Each line spoken as a soul faced the 42 assessors of the dead. Not to beg forgiveness, but to affirm the soul's alignment with Ma'at. There was no groveling, no cries, only balance. A steady voice declaring its harmony with the sacred order of things. The book also held spells to transform, to allow the soul to become a bird, a lotus, a flame, to pass through fire unharmed, to sail on Ra's bark through the stars. It spoke of lakes that burned, doors that vanished, serpents that only yielded to secret names. Each symbol, each creature, each trial was more dream than threat. A metaphor to be felt, not feared. Even the gods who guarded these gates were not cruel. They were simply old, unchanging, bound to ritual. They did not demand loyalty, but understanding. They did not punish ignorance, but required clarity. It was said that to pass through one gate, the soul must say, I am he who knows the name of the flame, or at another, I am pure, I have walked beside the one who sees without shadow. These phrases were not passwords, they were reflections, each one reminding the soul not of its obedience, but of its essence. And beneath every word, every symbol, one truth flowed, that names hold power. To name a thing was to define it, to speak it into being. To carry a name was to carry identity, history, resonance. A soul that remembered its true name was never truly lost. And so the dead were given not only their titles in life, but sacred names for use in death. These were whispered by priests, carved on amulets, woven into linen wrappings, hidden beneath golden masks. They were protection, not from monsters, but from forgetting. In every book of the dead, the most vital lines were those that reminded the soul of who it had been, what it had loved, where it was going. They were not rules, they were lullabies, soft echoes meant to carry the soul across the still waters of the night. Part 2. Interpretations, Forgotten Lore, and the Paths that Diverge. The Book of the Dead, though spoken of as if it were a single volume, was never truly fixed. It was more like a river, a current of spells and symbols flowing through centuries, reshaped by priests, kings, and common people alike. No two copies were identical. Each scroll, each wall carving, each funerary papyrus was tailored to the deceased, to the time, to the family's beliefs, even to the temple where the ritual was performed. Some versions focused heavily on protection, full of spells to ward off biting snakes, flame-breathing crocodiles, and invisible winds that could steal memory. Others spoke more softly of passage and transformation, emphasizing the soul's gentle shift into a bird, a breeze, a blue lotus blooming beside the Nile. Some told of solar rebirth, aligning the dead with Ra's endless journey through the sky and Duat alike. Others pointed toward Osiris, who reigned in darkness, not as an emperor, but as a gardener of souls. These differences have puzzled and inspired generations of scholars. To some, the shifting content is evidence of a fractured theology. To others, it is a mark of intimacy, proof that the ancient Egyptians viewed death not as one path, but as many. Each soul walked a unique version of the journey, and each family's beliefs shaped how that journey was supported. There were even disagreements about what happened after the weighing of the heart. Some believed that the field of reeds was a place of peace and reward, a paradise where the soul could farm eternal fields, live among ancestors, and feel neither thirst nor fear again. Others whispered of the soul sailing onward, not to a place, but into the very stars themselves, to join the company of Ra, becoming part of the eternal day. Some texts speak of gates guarded by gods with multiple heads, or names that must be sung in precise order. Others mention bridges over lakes of fire, or islands that appear only to those who remember the name of the wind. In one rare scroll, a soul must speak to a serpent who asks not for obedience, but for poetry. "Name the one who knows you best," it hisses, "and I will open my coil." Then there is the mystery of the secret names, names known only to the gods and the dead themselves. Isis, it is said, once learned the secret name of Ra by drawing it from him with spells and tenderness, allowing her to heal his divine ailment. Names in this mythology were never just labels, they were essence. Knowing someone's true name was to know their nature, their power, their past, and to speak that name was to shape the world itself. That is why the dead were often buried with amulets etched with their name, placed near the tongue or heart. That is why tombs had false doors and carved inscriptions, not for decoration, but as voices to call the soul home. A tomb was not a prison, but a conversation. The walls whispered reminders. You are still yourself. You are still whole. You have not been forgotten. Even in daily life, names held weight. Pharaohs took on throne names, sacred syllables wrapped in cartouches, enclosed like spells to ensure eternity. Gods had many names, some public, some whispered only in the deepest chambers of the temple, and those names changed over time, adapted by region, by dialect, by priestly tradition. Ra was also Atum. Atum was also Khepri, and Khepri the scarab that rolled the sun across the sky. So too, the Book of the Dead was never one thing. It was spellbook, hymn, map, journal, lullaby. It was not written to frighten or command, but to comfort, to accompany. A set of sacred reminders that no one walked the Duat alone, not even in death. Some versions of the text show the deceased addressing not only the gods, but their own body. O my heart, do not rise against me in judgment. O my legs, may you carry me swiftly. It is as if the soul, aware of its fragmentation after death, was gently reassembling itself, calling each part back home, speaking gently to lungs, to feet, to shadow and breath. And over time, as new dynasties rose and fell, as foreign tongues echoed through temple corridors, the book itself changed. Some spells were simplified, others grew more elaborate, In the late period, texts grew filled with magical diagrams, beautiful, intricate depictions of the soul's journey, complete with stars and guardians and floating barks. These were not for reading aloud, they were for seeing. They were maps not for the eyes of the living, but for the dreaming mind of the dead. We do not know how many versions were lost. Countless papyri have crumbled to dust. Countless tombs remain sealed or broken open long ago, their treasures scattered. But in every fragment found, in every faded glyph traced by moonlight on a tomb wall, the mystery lingers. What truly did the ancient Egyptians believe? What did they feel in those final moments before death? Was the book a comfort, a rite, a poetic ritual, or something more? Even now we cannot say, but the uncertainty does not diminish its beauty. It deepens it, because perhaps the mystery was the point, that no one, not even the gods, should know exactly what comes after the final breath. Only that there is a path, and that it begins with a name. Part 3. Reflections on the unknown and why it still matters. There are stories we preserve because they are clear, orderly, and complete. And then there are stories we carry because they aren't, because they flicker at the edge of knowing, because they speak to something too deep for fact, too soft for proof. The Book of the Dead belongs to the second kind. Its pages, its glyphs, its whispering prayers. They were never meant to explain the afterlife as a map explains a street. They were meant to prepare the soul to meet mystery with peace, to offer not certainty but rhythm, not answers but song. And that is why, even now, we return to these ancient lines, to these fragmentary scrolls and tomb walls kissed by time and sand and silence. Not because we believe in serpent-headed judges or islands that float on spells, but because the people who once did have left us a profound and quiet legacy. The belief that what comes after life is not a punishment, but a path. A path that winds through memory, through confession, through love. A path where what matters most is not what we owned, but how we lived, what we tended, whom we remembered. In the quiet mind of the Egyptian heart, it was not enough to simply die and be buried. One had to be named, guided, spoken for. One had to be given voice and ritual and orientation. Death was not a void. It was a procession. It was a boat pushed into starlit waters, and the words spoken over it were the sails. The hymns were the oars. The names were the stars. This is why even now the tombs speak. You need not read hieroglyphs to feel it. You stand in the echo of those painted halls, and there is something there, something deeper than the stone, a weight not heavy but present, as if 1,000 voices are still speaking, still guiding, still remembering, and the book, if we can still call it that, is not closed. Modern eyes read it in translation, in museum glass, in textbooks and poetic fragments. But for the ancients, it was not a text at all. It was a tool of continuity, a thread between lives, a place to record not information, but orientation, how to stay upright when the world changed form. Perhaps that is why so many copies existed despite the cost and labor. Perhaps that is why even the simplest version was treated as sacred as the most elaborate. Not because the magic was in the ink, but because the act of writing it was itself a prayer, a way of saying to the soul, you are not forgotten, you will find your way. And if the soul forgot, The texts made room for that too. They included spells to restore lost memory, to speak the names of forgotten gods, to soothe the panic of the wandering bar, the aspect of the soul that traveled like a bird looking for rest. There were no accusations in these pages, only reminders, and when the final spell was read, when the soul reached the last gate and passed into the field of reeds, there was no crown waiting, no throne, just a mirror of life, simple, eternal, in rhythm, grain that grew, waters that shimmered, loved ones waiting with open hands. In that place, the soul did not rule, it did not forget, it simply became whole again. And perhaps that is the greatest mystery of all, not what the Duat looked like or which spell held the most power, but this, that even 5,000 years ago, humanity longed not for conquest after death, but for peace, not for endless pleasure, but for restoration, for remembrance, for return. Even today, we do not know precisely what the ancient Egyptians believed. We cannot speak their prayers the way they did. We can only listen, trace the shapes, gently press our minds to the echo of their thoughts. But in doing so, we rediscover a truth deeper than fact, that when we speak the names of the dead, when we light a candle, when we whisper, "I remember you," we walk that same path. Segment 4. Alternate Paths and Forgotten Truths. Part 1. The traditional tale of Osiris, Isis, and the first afterlife. In the soft folds of time, among the oldest myths still whispered by stone and starlight, there lies the tale of Osiris, Isis, and the journey that gave shape to the soul's return. It is a story told not with haste or fury, but in careful layers, like linen wrapped around sacred memory, each one preserving a part of the truth. In the most familiar telling, Osiris is a benevolent ruler, a divine king who brings order and agriculture to a once wild land. He does not conquer it, but gently arranges it like one tending a garden. He teaches people how to sow and reap, how to live with the land, how to offer prayers and live in harmony with the gods. His reign is not marked by war, but by balance. Beside him stands Isis, his queen, his sister, his equal in grace and wisdom. She is magic incarnate. They are not divided by power, but unified in purpose. She supports his rule not from a throne, but with quiet presence, protection, and spellcraft. Their kingdom is not an empire, it is a rhythm of river and field, sun and ceremony. But into this harmony comes Seth, Osiris's brother. In some versions of the tale, he is born of the same divine parents. In others, he is cast as a force of the desert, dry, chaotic, unpredictable. He is strength without purpose, change without balance. He grows jealous of Osiris's peace, not because he wants to rule better, but because he cannot understand a world ruled by patience and fertility rather than domination. And so he plots. The tale often begins at a great feast. Seth presents a beautiful chest crafted with exacting dimensions, fitted only to the form of Osiris. He offers it as a gift, a game. Whoever fits inside may keep it. One by one, guests try, all fail. Osiris, smiling, steps in, and the lid is sealed. The chest becomes a coffin, the coffin a vessel. Seth casts it into the Nile, and with it, Osiris is taken from the world. Here, The myth splits into many voices, but the melody remains. Isis weeps, searches, reclaims. She finds his body in a foreign land, where a tree has grown around the chest, like a mother around a cradle. She carries him home. She hides him. She protects him. But Seth discovers the body once more. In his rage, he tears Osiris into pieces, scattering the parts across Egypt so that nothing whole remains. And again, Isis gathers, with Nephthys, with Anubis, with birds and stars and wind. She moves across the land like a prayer made flesh. She finds each fragment, each memory. She binds them, not with thread, but with grief and devotion. And in the quiet of a tomb, she performs her greatest spell. Osiris rises, not into life, but into eternity. He becomes ruler of Duat, the first to die and the first to reign beyond death. He does not return to the throne of the living. He becomes the heart of the afterlife. From their union, even in death, comes Horus, the falcon, the son born of love and magic, destined to reclaim the upper world and challenge Seth for what was lost. This tale, told across walls and scrolls through chants and temple rites, becomes the foundation of the Egyptian soul. Death is not to be feared, because Osiris has walked it first. He rules there with justice and stillness. Each person, when they die, follows the same journey, guided by Isis's devotion, tested by Ma'at's feather, welcomed or warned by Osiris's gaze. It is a myth of passage, of rhythm, of cosmic care. Its characters are not just gods, but archetypes: the silent king, the grieving healer, the unbalancing force, the child of promise. And so it has been remembered through thousands of years, through prayers spoken beside tombs, through amulets pressed gently into the hands of the dead. But myths, like rivers, shift, and just as the Nile curves and meanders, this tale holds other currents, currents that lie beneath, currents we will now follow. Part 2. The Hidden Version. Isis as weaver of the afterlife. In the shadow of the familiar tale lies another telling, quieter, more symbolic, and less often spoken. A version where the myth does not center on a jealous brother or a murdered king, but instead follows the threads of the world woven silently by Isis. In this version, Osiris does not simply die. He offers himself knowingly, calmly, to the cycle. He is not tricked, not trapped, but transformed. The myth begins not with a feast, but with a vision. Osiris dreams of a world beyond life, a place of stillness and spirit, a space where souls might find peace beyond time. And he knows that to reach it, to shape it, someone must go first. Someone must enter the unknown willingly, not to conquer it, but to give it form through presence. So he chooses to descend. In this older, more mystical version of the tale, whispered in temples long faded, painted behind hidden doorways in tombs, Isis does not search for her husband in desperation, but in sacred ritual. She becomes the high priestess not only of memory, but of the veil itself. Her journey is not merely emotional, it is cosmic. She travels not to restore Osiris to life, but to anchor his presence in a new dimension. Each part of his body she retrieves is not just a piece of flesh, it is a symbol of the cosmos. His heart, the sun, his spine, the Nile, his voice, the breath of spellcraft, his eyes, the day and the night. She is not mourning, she is creating. The reassembly of Osiris is not the undoing of death, but the construction of the afterlife. In this telling, Isis is not only wife and mourner, she is creator of realms. Through her ritual, Duat is born, not discovered but woven. It takes shape from her spells, her footsteps, her invocations. Where she walks, gates appear. Where she weeps, rivers flow. Where she sings, the stars above Duat find their orbits. And Osiris, once whole in the world of breath, becomes whole again in the world of shadow. His new form is not flesh, but law. His crown no longer rules the earth, but governs the path to peace. He becomes the pulse of judgment, not through power, but through stillness. He is the rhythm of the scales. His silence is what steadies the hearts of the dead. In this version, Seth is not so much an enemy as he is the necessary disruption, the boundary between the upper and lower worlds. He scatters Osiris not out of spite, but to trigger the divine weaving. Without separation, there can be no rejoining. Without scattering, no sacred ritual. And Horus, their son, is not a warrior seeking vengeance, but a bridge between worlds. He carries the breath of his mother and the memory of his father. He does not only battle Seth, he learns from him. He does not only claim kingship, he completes the cycle. This alternate path does not contradict the well-known myth. It deepens it. It speaks not of gods as characters caught in emotion, but as forces within the self. Osiris as the inner wisdom that willingly retreats into the unknown. Isis as the inner knowing that reweaves brokenness into meaning. Seth as the voice of upheaval that sparks rebirth. Horus as the new self born from balance. In this story, the Duat is not beneath the world. It is within it, within every season of loss, every quiet moment of release, every gentle return. It reminds us that death is not merely something that happens at the end of life. It is something we pass through many times, when we change, when we grieve, when we let go. And in those moments, there is always an Isis at work inside us, gently gathering the pieces, softly naming them sacred, and shaping a path back to wholeness. Part 3. Why stories change and what endures beneath them. We often think of myths as fixed, etched into stone, unchanged across millennia. But they are not. Myths breathe. They shift and shimmer like sunlight on water. They adapt to the moment they are told, and the soul that listens. And in this soft, final part of the tale, we come to rest in that truth, that stories evolve, not because they are weak, but because they are alive. The tale of Osiris has been painted on tomb walls, recited in temple hymns, rewritten in scrolls, echoed through ages into museums and novels and quiet nighttime whispers. And in every telling, something is left out, something is added. Some parts are spoken with fire, others with tears. But the core remains. It is not the details that matter most. It is the feeling beneath them, a feeling that reaches beyond time. It is the quiet grief of losing something precious, the soft determination to remember, the ritual of gathering brokenness and making something sacred of it, the knowledge that even after death something continues, that love outlasts form, that silence can still hold memory. In one version, Osiris is betrayed. In another, he chooses. In one, Isis mourns. In another, she creates. In some, Seth is enemy. In others, he is necessary force. But all versions agree on what lies at the heart of the myth: a cycle of loss and return, of descent and renewal, of life continuing, not in defiance of death, but through it. And the Duat, that shadowy realm, is never one place. It bends to the shape of the story told about it. For the pharaoh, it may be a series of trials, a court of judgment, a voyage by star. For the farmer, perhaps it is a field of wheat that never withers. For the child, a river whose banks are lined with every voice they ever loved. Stories change because we change. What we fear alters. What we need shifts. And the myths shift with us. But this is not a betrayal of their power. It is proof of it, because within every version, no matter how modern or ancient, the truth remains. The soul is not discarded. It is guided. It is seen. It is weighed not with cruelty, but with care. The feather of Ma'at still floats beside the heart. The eye of Ra still watches through darkness. And somewhere in the still center of the Duat, Osiris still waits, not to punish, but to welcome. And Isis, she still walks between worlds, gathering fragments. She still reminds us, in quiet dreams and forgotten moments, that no part of us, no memory, no name, is ever truly lost. As long as we are remembered, we are whole. So the myth remains, not carved only into stone, but into sleep, into silence, into the soft story we tell ourselves. When we are ready to let go of the day and drift into the dream beyond. The still waters where stories rest now, let the breath return slowly. Let the sand settle in your thoughts. Let the long journey slip gently behind you, like a boat gliding out of sight on a silver river. You have walked beside gods and shadows. You have drifted through myths older than memory and listened to a world that never truly sleeps. Not a world of endings, but of continuance, of soft transitions, of sacred silence. You have felt the weight of the feather, not as judgment, but as balance. You have heard the voice of Isis, not crying out, but gathering. You have stood in the halls of stone and starlight, where names are remembered like lullabies, and Osiris waits, not as a king above, but as a keeper below. And now you return, but not quite the same, because you carry something with you, a soft thread of rhythm, a memory not of fact, but of feeling, the knowledge that the dead are not lost, that endings are not abrupt, that beneath the world of light there is another world, just as real, just as ordered, just as full of care. The Duat is not a distant place. It is in the hush between heartbeats, in the moments when you remember someone without knowing why, in the flicker of candlelight, in the rustle of linen, in the quiet weight of dusk. It is the part of the world that moves slower, that listens deeper, that welcomes you when all other voices have gone quiet. And the myth, it continues, because you are not outside of it, you are part of it now, a soul with names, with stories, with memory. You walk your own path, but not alone. The gods walk beside you. The feather floats before you, and the silence behind you holds everything that matters. So, rest now. Let the river carry you. Let the stars above Nut's arched sky shimmer gently through your breath. Let your name echo softly in the halls of the dream world, not loudly, not urgently, but like incense curling upward in a room that remembers everything. Good night, traveler of sand and soul. Good night, bearer of story. Good night, until the next return.
Oh